Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of PR Explored, the PR podcast where we delve into trends and topics related to public relations. I'm your host, Michelle Garrett. I'm a public relations consultant and a writer, and my guest today is Fatou Barry. Yay, Fatou! Yay! Welcome. And Fatou is the founder of the PR Girl Manifesto. If you didn't know that, I'm sure a lot of people probably know who you are. But I would love it. Thank you for being here, first of all, right? I
Thank you
thank
for
you.
having me.
And I would love it if you would just tell us a little bit about, everything that you're up to, anything that you want to share.
Of course. Well, first, I have to start off by saying thank you. This is a full circle moment for me. In the early days of PR Girl Manifesto, when we were just starting to build programming and community, we were incredibly active on Twitter. And I mentioned this to you, but you used to host a Twitter chat, and I genuinely always looked forward to it. I think, was one of the key spaces where people were like being thoughtful and strategic and having conversations about PR and comms. So you were so generous and insight. So you were a real resource, and I have to just like say thank you. So to be sitting in conversation with you feels very meaningful, not just personally, but as a reflection, I think of like where we started and like where we are now. So thank you first. For those who might not know me, I'm Fatou. I'm a communication strategist and the founder of PR Girl Manifesto. We are a global community and editorial platform for PR and comms professionals. I started PR Girl Manifesto because when I entered the industry, I felt like there was a real lack of accessibly and culturally competent resources. I think there was a lot of like unspoken rules about how to succeed, but not enough guidance on like visibility, right? Or like how the media ecosystem was evolving. And I wanted to basically build a space where PR professionals from early career to senior leadership could access insight, community, and strategy in one place. Today, that was like what 10 years ago. So today we operate, I think, as both kind of like a professional development platform that has an editorial voice. We do panels, we host industry conversations, we publish analysis. So we're always like doing case studies. We're working on a career readiness fellowship that we're really excited about. And we basically study, I think, media through a PR lens. We look at trust, we look at entertainment, we look at strategy, and put it into a context that can support PR and comm professionals at every stage. So I think at its core, my work is really about helping PR and comm professionals move from amplification to like authorship and supporting and creating a culturally competent industry.
I love that, and that's very important. And so you're doing such important work, and I'm just again, I am thrilled to have you here, and I appreciate, what you said, about how we met on Twitter, and we were chatting a little bit beforehand about the
Yeah.
good old days, and
Yes. The good old days. Yes.
so this is a full circle moment for me too to have you here, and I'm just so thrilled that you're here, and we are going to be chatting a little bit about a topic that's maybe new to some people, but it's really not necessarily
Yeah.
that new. We're let's just kind of set the stage a little bit because we're talking about personality brands.
Yeah.
And I saw a post, the PR Girl Manifesto page, which everybody should follow on LinkedIn. I'll put that in the comments in just a second as well. About how brands are restructuring around content, entertainment, and talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's let's just talk about that. Why
Yeah.
don't you share a little bit about that?
For sure, yeah. So when I think about like a personality brand, right? I'm not thinking about it in like, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, like the individual who's behind the brand. It's not like founder like led, like strategy. I'm really talking about a structural shift, and I think how companies are defining themselves. Historically, brands I feel like have centered strategy around products and campaigns. Right? You identify a target audience, you develop messaging, and then you run your campaign cycle and kind of move on. And I think what we're seeing now is different. I think brands are like really trying to build continuity, so they're prioritizing reoccurring voices. They have recognized recognizable collaborators and narrative arcs that are long term and that extend beyond just like a single launch window. And so I think a personality brand for me is like one where you can clearly articulate not just what the company sells, but what it believes, how it thinks, and how it consistently represents it in like culture. So it's really, I think, about identity in many ways, over messaging. And I think we're seeing more of this now, right? Because we are in a different kind of like reality where I think attention is fragmented. We talk about this a lot. Trust in institutions is declining. And I think cultural relevance is the thing that moves really quickly. So a lot of brands, I think, are asking themselves not like anymore like how do we advertise, but how do we become someone or something or a brand that people choose to spend their time with. So I just think it's like a different strategic posture that they are, like a personality brand takes on. It's relational. I think it's ongoing, and it requires like intention.
Yeah. And I think your point about how attention is so fractured and splintered, and people are in their little, because it used to be that, you know, everybody would be around the television and would be sharing in a singular moment of, you know, I mean, like, I don't know, it's been quite a while now, right? But there would be times when everybody would be watching the same show and they'd see the
Yeah.
same ads and da da da. So, but it's not really like that. And everybody's in their own little pocket of, and I often think and say, like, well, this just isn't for me. This particular thing isn't for me. And that's totally fine. But
It
like,
is.
if you're trying to reach all of those different segments of your audience, you would have to go about it a little differently because it's not
Yeah.
just one solution and that's it.
No, there are many solutions now. There are many audiences. There are many platforms. There's just so much. I think that brands and companies like the ecosystem that I think they exist in has continued to expand and continues to expand.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the brands, at
Hmm.
least, Gap,
Yeah.
is noteworthy now because
Yeah.
they kind of they've added, whoops, I don't want to put that up necessarily.
It
It is there.
is there.
Um no, I tried to put the question up and it's saying that I don't know. I got a little error message there. Let's see. Um let's try it again. So Gap has
Yeah.
added a chief entertainment officer.
Yes.
And it got a lot of coverage.
So
So,
much coverage.
I mean, it is noteworthy because it's I
Mhm.
guess it's viewed as the first time somebody's actually had that title.
Yeah.
But again, before we went on, we were talking about how it's not necessarily new, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. So I think that Gap's announcement, like, it got a lot of press, right? And I think it wasn't just the title, like the title was very important, but it was the signal that it sent, right? So I think when we talk about like a legacy fashion brand publicly creating a chief entertainment officer role, and we see that it gets like widespread media coverage, it really tells us that entertainment is no longer being treated as like a campaign support, that we're seeing it being elevated to like an executive level infrastructure. But as we were talking, like it didn't start with Gap. I think Gap might be the first to say like, "Hey, we're hiring or we've appointed a chief entertainment officer." But like we talk about Nike, right? Nike has been operating, I think, like a
mhm,
studio for years. They've been building so much like athlete-driven storytelling, that functions both as a cultural narrative, like as a cultural narrative, and not just advertising. Um, Take a look at Red Bull. Red Bull built an entire media like house. They produce films, they produce events, they produce global content, right? And it's like a media network. So to me, like it feels like just taking Nike and Red Bull, it feels like IP development, right? And not just marketing. And then if you
mhm,
look at even in the last year, like Dick's Sporting Goods like launched a in-house content and production studio, right? And so it's dedicated, I think, to telling human like centered stories through the lens of sport, and they've
mhm.
produced like feature length films and like episodic series. So it's like there's a lot of original programming, I think, that is meant to connect with culture and community. And even if you look at, you know, Skims, right, who treat celebrity collaborations as like episodic programming, each product drop feels like a chapter in a larger storyline, and it's not just a standalone product moment. And so even with like, and I know I'm like, wait, yeah, there's so many like examples. I'm like, even like if you look at these like media platforms who are like launching signature series, so all of these,
Mhm.
like, you're seeing reoccurring content formats, and I think they're creating audience habit and community. And but that's programming thinking, right? That's thinking from like a, how do we build something that continues to rent, like to basically like request people's attention. So I don't think that people are trying, like brand specifically, I think they're moving from a place of like now no longer wanting to rent attention, right? They
Mhm.
want to own their audience relationship, they want to own their intellectual property, and they want to build a cultural presence that is reoccurring. I think Gap formalizing the role just makes it like what's been happening internally and structurally a lot more visible to folks.
That makes a lot of sense, and I love the additional examples because, again, when I saw the post, it made a lot of sense to me, but I don't know if
Yeah.
everybody knows what we're talking about when we
Yeah.
talk about a personality brand. So, it's not really new, it's just that Gap has kind of
Yeah.
created a role for somebody to kinda lead that,
Yeah, and I think we're gonna see so many more of those roles start to come to life. Like I think we're gonna see a lot of like entertainment officers, a lot of like, in-house like content, like managers, directors, but it be like larger than just like content that's related to like maybe a campaign or influencer marketing or like social campaigns.
right. Well, I think if they own it, it is a little bit easier to control, or I don't know. They just stay closer to it, and I feel like then it's just more authentic than just handing it over. Not to say that not to. There's nothing against agencies or consultants or anything like that. However, I
Yeah.
could see that a brand might want to stay as close as possible to its audience, and therefore the content that it's serving the audience, and it makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense, I think so.
absolutely.
Um, so let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah.
I keep YouTube is giving me errors today, so whenever I try to post,
They know this conversation is just too
I
good.
don't know what's going on. I'll read it since I can't get it to
No
show up here.
worries.
So one of the articles talked about how Gap wants to prove memorable content that doubles as advertising can keep people talking about its clothes.
Mhm.
So my question then is, does this signal a merging of disciplines?
Mm. I think so, right? I think in recent years there has been a lot of blurring, right, between paid, earned, and owned. But I think that those distinctions are becoming kind of like operationally irrelevant, right? So I think before people would be like, no, I only focus on this one thing, or this is the one thing, this is the function, this is the one function that I'm like anchored in, right? But like the way people like engage with content has changed, right? So content can now function as advertising. You can see a piece of like maybe something that a brand puts out on like social be leveraged and then used as like a commercial or a spot, right?
Mhm.
Advertising can function as entertainment. Entertainment can generate earned media. So like all of these things are like in I think in tune like with each other now, right? And so because of that, strategy can't really be fragmented anymore, right?
Mhm.
So I think when we talk about maybe like specifically PR, right? Like we can't be brought in at the end of a campaign cycle anymore, right?
Right.
Brands are building their own series, right? Their own talent partnerships and their own content ecosystems. Like the narrative architecture that we, I think, support in has to be designed at the beginning. And so I think all of like the blurring or the merging of disciplines, right, it is
Mhm.
like it's no longer about just placing stories; it's about producing them. So I would definitely would say that it is a signal of the merging of disciplines, and I think kind of just this upstream collaboration that is happening between like PR, creative, brand, talent, and media. And so it's kind of changing like just the dynamics within organization.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because I know a lot of folks that are looking for work right now,
Yeah.
and this is not new. This particular point that I'm going to make, but the titles are all over the place, is what
Yeah.
my friends have told me, and that also the responsibilities. So it's really hard now to put people in a box as far as, okay, you're going to do PR or media, you're
Absolutely.
going to do advertising, paid media, you're going to do
Yeah.
content, owned media.
Yeah,
yeah.
you kind of have
And
to know, and then, like it's like there's more expectation, I think, in the role, like now, to like understand different disciplines and to be able to tap into some of the skills of other disciplines that I think historically we haven't, like, in PR we haven't had to, like, to
yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if on the education side, on the university side, if it's keeping up, if the programs are keeping up. And I know some that probably are, but it's interesting to me too, because I also uh, have seen or talked to students who, I mean, I don't know if they're getting that all the, it's really hard to touch on all the things that they might need. But
Absolutely.
I feel like there's really a focus now on the technology side, which, I mean, I understand AI and all
Yeah.
that. However, I feel like, being able to, I still think writing is important, being able to
Absolutely.
present and speak on your feet is really
Yes.
important, present
Yeah.
your ideas. And I just think the multimedia piece is so important. And,
Hmm.
like we never studied really graphic design or,
No.
video production. And I know there's a lot of tools for all these things, but I think it's really helpful if people have that understanding of how to do it before you just plug a tool in and let the tool do it.
Absolutely. What I love is I have a colleague, Michael K. He teaches, and he'll bring in like basic real life professionals across different disciplines and across different like industries. So he doesn't just like bring in like someone on the PR end. He'll bring in someone in social. He'll bring in someone in marketing, and the goal is to give his students a really, I think, like well-rounded understanding of the environment, like the professional environment they're going to be entering. And I find it so valuable because it's like you can learn so much, right, through a textbook. Like, and I think like if your curriculum is being updated, absolutely, but you won't know until you are like kind of thrown into the lion's den of like working in an industry that
Yeah.
is changing quickly. And so I completely agree. I think it's so important that curriculum and students get access to like a wide breadth of like, hey, like these are the skills that are never going to change. These are foundational. You're going to need to know how to write. You're going to need to know how to like do, like to speak, right, to do
Mhm.
XYZ, to even like to think critically, because I think that's another part too that like we don't push enough. Is like we need we need to
Yeah.
push PR and com students to be critical thinkers,
Yeah.
especially as they enter, I think, I know that the world looks different like now than it did 10 years ago, than it did 20 years ago, than it 30.
Right.
I think like there's such like a need for a really just like good like holistic like sense of just like the skills that you need to succeed in this day and age.
Oh, yeah. And critical thinking is on the decline, as we have seen, and AI is not helping anything. And also just being constantly, scrolling on your phone, and, people don't read, and then they don't write, and then the critical
We
thinking.
are in a media literacy crisis, and I think it's so like we constantly we share this post. I know we're probably like segueing off a little, but like we
Okay.
share this post consistently, which is like there were years spent talking about like communications was like a party degree, right? And like it might actually be one of the most important degrees because we're in a media literacy crisis. Like we need more people to like to be in comms. We need more people to be like taking the things that they learn and like how to like critique a piece of media, how to like analyze it, how to tell if it's real or not, especially in this age of like AI misinformation and like trust decline. All of those things I think contribute to the decline in media literacy as well.
Absolutely. And it's very important. And as we see the shift again away from traditional media
Yeah.
outlets to, people getting their news on YouTube or TikTok or wherever they're getting it, those are not necessarily journalists. And so then you really have to think critically about, what are they really presenting, and is it true?
Yeah.
Because just because somebody says it or
Doesn't.
writes it does not mean that it is true.
It's so interesting. Like it's happened a few times now with like in my own life where like someone has sent me something and I'm like, hey, did you verify this? Like my immediate like inclination is when I read something, I need to find 2 or 3 other sources, like
Yeah.
that's that
Yeah.
confirm the same thing, or that I can like, but people don't. That's not happening anymore. They're seeing something on the internet, on YouTube, on TikTok. Their
Yeah.
favorite creator is saying something, and it's like that's it. Like there's no need to like to check in and be like, hey, is this accurate?
Yeah.
And so I know that's a segue, but I think it's a very important. It's important to like anything that we do. So
I think it's very important. So I appreciate that because yeah, it's very near and dear to my heart. And yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I studied journalism and PR was within that program
yeah,
when I went to school. And so I really believe that journalists are doing important work and they don't approach it the way that somebody who doesn't have that. I mean, it's a whole different thing. If you don't have that training, you're not going to approach it in the same
it's a
way. You're
whole
just going to be,
there's an like an incomplete like ethics and accountability to like the
yeah,
craft of journalism that like you don't like it's like a craft. You have to study it, you have to adhere by there's journalistic integrity, and that's
right.
something that like we expect it from a journalist. People don't expect it, even though they should, from some of like whether it be like creators or whether it be like some maybe independent platform. So I completely I
Yeah. Yeah, very important point. And Janelle says we need so many more people in comms, and
we do.
I agree. Although I do feel like that sometimes it's hard to find a good program to learn. And yeah, kind of went through this with one of my own kids, and so yeah, it was the it's interesting because I don't know if people understand how important it is, and
It's so important. It's like, yeah, I am like I shout from the rooftops all the time that we need more people in communications, right? So we need to basically I think do a better job at helping folks who are interested like understand like that comms is like a viable career path and like what they can do in communications, right?
right, right,
I think when you think about PR and comms, oftentimes like there's a very like narrow, like linear way of like, oh, okay, so it must mean this and it must mean that, and like there's just so much falls under that umbrella. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. But I also the second bit of that too, to what you said, is like we need good communications programs. Like we need ones that aren't just teaching this work in theory, right? Because it's one thing to look at a textbook and like read from it and like take
right.
notes, but it's a completely different thing to like to look at the function and the context of the world that we live in like right now. So
Yeah. Well, 2 things, that came to mind. One is, when you were talking a little bit ago about, like, real world experience, like internships too, and I feel like some, schools do a better job, with that, but that's just a crucial piece because it really does help students kinda get their feet wet and
absolutely.
kinda see what they like in addition to just gaining that experience that they can then use in their portfolio or,
Yep.
you know, it could lead to connections, that might lead to, full-time work when they graduate, so that's also important. And then just the role of, communications as far as building trust with your audiences,
Yeah.
so and we see again, trust obviously is on the decline and it makes sense why it is, but that's what we do. That's what we are doing is fostering that trust with our audiences. So
Yeah.
hopefully, you know,
Right.
hopefully people understand that and see it as a viable career path because it's not dead, it's not
It's
going
not.
away.
It's not going away. If anything, it's more needed than ever. So yes.
Um we do have a question. It's not exactly, it's a little off the topic, but we'll take a look at it. So,
Okay.
what should people look for when deciding on a PR comms professional to work with? So, I mean, I
I mean, there are many. I mean, yeah, I think there. So I think one of the biggest thing is alignment, right? And I say that because I think there's not a shortage of people who are doing in PR and comms, but like,
Right.
are they well versed in the specific, like what you're looking for specifically, in
Right.
terms of like industry, right? The industry that you exist in, or your product or your company exists in, I think is always important, because there is such the subject matter experts do exist, and doing PR or comms across different industries does look different. So while the skill set I think is, transferable, there are specific nuances within industries, that are important. So that's why I say alignment is super important. Like, does this person have a background in what it is that you need, them to be doing? So if you're a beauty brand, like, you probably shouldn't like be looking for someone that's coming in from like, maybe a healthcare or like a fight. You just being honest. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing. I think alignment is really, really important. I think that's what people should be looking for when deciding on a PR and comms professional to work with. I think seeing kind of like a track record too, like what, one expectation that I have of whenever clients or potential clients are asking, like, yeah, I'll have a portfolio. I'll walk you through like case studies, being able to like really like showcase the work, and not the work in like, this is what I do, but like being able to be like, hey, like this is what a case study looked like, this is what a project looked like, here was the input or the strategy, and here's what happened as a result.
Right. Yeah, results. That's important, and I do agree because there are certain industries that I don't really go near because my experience is very limited, and
Yeah.
I would refer that out, or just tell them that I'm not the best fit for that because yeah, I do think, but I don't think enough people ask that question, which is interesting to me too. And also people, I know consultants I've seen often when they do like have a social media profile in their bio, they don't call out
Mhm.
specifically industries that they are
100%.
specializing in, and I feel like that's really important too because it's a differentiator for you, so,
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that people outside those industries won't still call on you because 'cause
Yeah.
I've also learned that myself. It's like, well, I'm not gonna pigeonhole myself by saying this because
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
still get, inquiries from people in other industries,
Yep. Love it.
so Ash, I hope that helped,
Yes. Okay.
So the next question that I have is,
Yes.
we've talked a little bit about this, but brands are behaving like media companies. So how
Mhm.
does this impact the work of PR and comms professionals?
Yeah, I think it's expanding the scope of our role significantly, right? I So if brands are behaving like media companies, I think PR professionals have to think beyond like coverage metrics, right? So like, we now have to think in terms of narrative systems. Like, what is the long term arc? Who are the reoccurring voices? What cultural spaces, are we choosing to commit to consistently? I think it requires like a bit of a fluency and talent strategy too. So like, if a brand's personality is anchored in people, then the people that you choose to work with become strategic, right? Because it's not just about visibility, it's about authority, and alignment. So I think that it's just our scope is changing, right? There's also an ethical layer there. The more human a brand tries to be, I think the more important authenticity becomes. And like, we know that people are like engaging in manufactured authenticity. So I think PR professionals kind of become both like narrative architects, and in some ways are like a bit of like the ethical guardrails. And that's something that I'd say like maybe hasn't always been a part of the scope, but I think it expands the scope of our work.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I guess you could look at it 2 ways. I mean, I think, this crosses my mind a lot too. It's like we sometimes see people pushing back on being asked to do too many things, right?
Yeah.
So we wanna hire one person and they're gonna manage, all of these things, be responsible for
Yes.
all these things, and the salary is gonna stay what the salary
Yes.
is, you know?
Yes.
So that's a kind of an issue, but
Yeah,
I mean, I
absolutely.
like the positive of this is that we get to do more things, which brings more variety to our work. It's never boring, and
Yeah.
we get experience doing all these things. And you might find something you really love versus just doing, being focused on one particular area, for example.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that as the scope increases of like what folks are what the expectation is for PR and com professionals, I think that like we should also be paid accordingly for it, because I think that is a problem in our industry. Like, that we are expected to do so many things and not get paid for it. And like that in itself is like, no, our scope increases, we have a lot to bring, and we should be getting paid more for the work that we do, because it is a lot of work that people don't always like recognize it to be.
Yeah. So if the scope increases, so should the salary.
Yes.
We're putting that in the comments. So,
Yes, I love
um,
that.
but yeah, no, I could see that being a double-edged sword. And again, for students, it could be a little overwhelming. So I would say again, if you're younger in your career, if you're just, you're still in school, don't get overwhelmed, but just, understand that, you might be asked to do things that you might not have thought would fall in
Follow
your,
it, yeah.
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 So, and that, like I said, that could be good or bad. But just something to be thinking about and be prepared for. And again, I think having examples of your work and having a
Hmm.
portfolio and things to show that you've done and results that you've gotten, I think that's really important. And for companies that hire the interns, bring the interns in, they should pay them,
They
and
should absolutely pay them. Yes. Yes.
they should also give them opportunities to do real work and not just clean
Yes.
out the tchotchke closet or whatever.
Exactly. Cultivate the talent that you have. Like, yes.
Right. And yeah, give them a chance, because they're actually, there's some really bright students out there
Yeah.
just, dying for an opportunity to do something and show what they can do. So
100%.
this next question is really two parts. Um, so are brands going to increase their collaborations with influencers, do you think,
Mhm.
based on this trend?
I think so. I think that but it's going to move beyond what we traditionally think of as like influencer collaboration, right? Or like, as most people know, like influencer integration or marketing.
Right.
I think that in we're entering kind of like, it's not just like an influencer, right? We're entering what I think is like an expert era, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So I don't think people are like solely focusing on like creators with reach, right? Anymore. I think brands are like collaborating or will continue to collaborate with people who hold cultural authority within like their specific communities.
Yeah, I kind of like that, because
Mhm.
I think, I've always struggled with the influencer term, because in my mind, working in PR, journalists are influential, analysts are
Yes.
influential. We've
Yes.
always worked with them. So in
Mhm.
that way, we have always done uh, influencer marketing, work with influencers.
Yeah.
However, when you're when means somebody's being paid to promote a particular product
Hmm.
because they're a celebrity or an athlete or whatever it is, I just
Yeah.
don't, I'd rather have somebody be an actual advocate and expert. Like, maybe there are celebrities that actually use your product, and then
Yeah.
that makes more sense to me. But this thing where we just pay someone to hold up the product, or like, I don't.
No, I completely agree, and I think we're even seeing it. Like, there's like tension, like in terms of like, I think across industries right now, where it's like, all right, there's this influx of creators, but where are the experts? Like, everyone is like, we're in the expert deficit, I think, for real. And when you think about like specifically industries where like health, right, like wellness and things that have like real world impact on, if someone is telling you to do this thing that is actually not like verified or not a good thing to do, like
Yeah.
those have real world like implications and effects on people. So but I think that's why I say I think that like the way that the way that like brands are starting to treat their companies like media companies, and as a result, what that means for like influencer collaborations, I think we're going to see a wider breadth of like who folks are working with, and I think there's going to be a need for like experts versus just somebody who's like, identifies as an influencer or a content creator.
Well, that's the thing. And if you call yourself an influencer, that always,
Listen.
I'm and then the term creator has always bothered me a lot as well.
Yeah.
So interesting that you brought that up, because to me, somebody that just is creating stuff does not mean that they're an expert at
Yeah, I think
whatever
there's a
it is.
and you know what? I think it's like it so when we spin too far to one side, I think like we find ourselves like course correcting, and I think that's what's happening now, is that a lot of individuals are identifying the fact that like, oh, actually no, like we need experts. Like just because you like I think the last few years there's been this belief that, you know, and I have no gripe against, like, I think do what you have to do, make your money. Like, I know that influencing and content creating also opens up doors for people. There's a lot to it, but I do
Mhm.
think that there is a very real need for experts. I think that there is a very real need for individuals again who have like this cultural authority that is not just like manufactured by like views and like likes and comments. I think that that is something that is extremely important.
Yeah. Well, I love that that might be trending away from that
Yeah.
because it I just never, some things just don't
Yeah,
feel
and no, and I also think that just like the way that the way that people are, I think, like engaging with media, the way that people are like as a whole, I think we're also seeing like a bit of a decline in celebrity culture, which is why I think there's such an opportunity here, right? Where actually the community leader, right? Or the like the individual who has more cultural like authority within a very specific community, like they probably wield more influence, right? Because they are like they're not like propping themselves up as an influencer, but these are people who like have influence, but it's related to work that they're doing or they have been doing, and I think that is extremely important.
not propping themselves up. That I love that.
Yeah, listen, because and I was it's like we need, I always say this, like we love, I love what influencing does for people. I love that it like through this medium individuals are like exposed to possibilities and opportunities that maybe like they would have never have gotten before. um I think we still do need individuals who like, we need people who like are not, who just are trying to do the work too. I do believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there ought to be a little authenticity, a little heart and soul in it.
Mhm.
It shouldn't, again, it shouldn't just be because, yeah, you're being paid
Yeah,
millions of
and people
dollars
can
or whatever.
people can manufacture authenticity now, right? It is a thing that like a lot of brands have realized that like, oh wait, actually we can like mold this thing, we can like cosplay as XYZ. And so like people are really seeking individuals who that they know like have done the work, are in these spaces, and like are credible. I think that, and
Yep.
that's, experts are credible.
Yes. I love all of these words that you are using.
I love it.
And well, and part two of that question, which you've kind of talked about a little bit,
Yeah.
is who else might brands collaborate with on this type of content beyond what you would think of as a traditional influencer
Yeah,
type
I
of
mean, it could be
yeah.
a founder, you could, a community leader, which I mentioned. I think, just and I really think it can be anyone. I think it's just somebody who carries credibility and depth in a like in niche spaces, and I think it's like less. It's going to. I think it is going to be less about follower count, and it's going to be more about legitimacy. I really do. I think transactional influencer activations are going to like shift to sustained storytelling opportunities and partnerships. And so like I do foresee brands building like reoccurring collaborations with people who can anchor them in like meaningful like cultural conversations.
Yeah. Well, this would be a fabulous trend if it actually
I hope so. I'm listening, but like I think we are. There is a lot more. Like people need experts. People are like, there is a desire for experts, and yeah.
well, and I mean, this wasn't on my mind before just this minute, but like, the fact that we see AI based search, GEO, AEO, whatever you want to call it, it's not, it's changing search too.
Mhm.
So what I am seeing is that people that have been in a space for a long time doing the work, that is showing up, that
Yeah,
is adding the credibility. So then when the person goes into search and that person pops up, they already have heard of the person
yeah.
because they are in the space doing the work. They are probably an expert. And so that is a really big deal in my mind. And that makes sense. Not like some of these other things, like again, with the search packing, the keywords, and like, there's just certain things in the industry that have not made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like maybe we're actually
Yeah,
maybe it'll make sense.
I hope so. I truly hope so. I truly hope so. I really do. I think it's like it's tough. It is tough sometimes, I think, to exist in this version of the internet, in this version of multiple industries, and be like, what are we doing? What is going on? What are we doing? Um, and I also think it's changing stuff, like the fact that like so many journalists now feel forced to be creators too. Like there's just there's a lot happening that I think is like kind of working against like where we should be trending and tracking towards.
Yeah, I just saw somebody post about that as well, that trend of journalists having to create a personal brand. It
Yeah,
goes against,
yeah.
being
I think, yeah,
ethical.
I think
'Cause
even at the Washington, it might be, if I'm misquoting them, I think it was the Washington Street Journal, or no, it's one of the, it's WSJ. I can't remember that
yeah,
now,
Wall Street,
but
that's
I
it.
think they were developing an internal like talent like hub and incubator for some of their writers. I'll have to like make sure that it, but
Yeah.
I know that I read it recently, and I was like, this is so interesting, like because most people who get into journalism just want to do the work, they just want to tell stories, and now
Right.
there's an added like I think pressure to be a creator because that is where people's attention is going to.
Yeah, this conversation, I love this conversation.
Yeah, I do too.
That I'm just writing things down because, to come back to think about, for the future,
Yeah.
because, again, like if a journalist is also working on a book and
Hmm.
they have information that would probably be important to put in a story, like now, then
Yeah.
they save it for months, years, that feels to me like, that's not ethical as a journal. I mean, that's, I
Yeah.
am passing judgment, I guess, but yeah, I mean, I don't, that trend is not a good one in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it takes you for like people want to do the work, and I think that's a lot of like
Mhm.
the tension right now is that a lot of people just want to do the work, and it feels like you have to do the thing that you wanted to do, and then also like seven other things to get people to like listen and to like pay attention and to understand. And I think it's like it's like a really like tough thing I think to navigate, especially if like you're just like you can't sign up to be all these things, you signed up to do one
Right.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's sad because again, as somebody who has studied journalism, I think that that's, it's important.
Yeah.
And again, like people are, that's, it's not enough to
Yeah.
just do that work, which is hard work.
It's hard work already. Yeah.
Yeah, and important work, and the other is kind of frivolous. I mean, if we're being honest, like,
Yeah.
you know, building your audience on Substack versus, giving information to, audiences that need it, like
And I think it's also like what is the like this is a conversation that I have a lot with my friends, of like what is the purpose, right? So like is it when when you're producing to build an audience versus producing to get information out, that's two different like strategies, right? And so what, especially in a time where like where does people's attention go? Rage bait, like like things that are just very like we're in an attention economy. An attention economy doesn't necessarily mean that like what people are paying attention to is what they should be paying attention to, or that is the right thing to pay attention to. And so I think it creates this like tension for individuals who are working inside of this, like I don't want to like, yeah, I want people to like read the things that I'm writing about because they're important things that need to get out into the world, but like what people's attention span is like towards like the hot take, towards like the thing that's gonna like it's inflammatory, and so I think like that's a whole other conversation, but yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that goes into that.
yeah. Yeah, oh, you're just you're hitting it. You're nailing it on so many levels. And I know we're not here to talk about all these things. So somebody mentioned, Stephanie says that's definitely a thing at the Washington Post where they have
Yeah,
the
okay, I knew it was one
branding.
of them. I'm like, it's the
Yeah.
W. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, Wall Street Journal, Washington. Potato, potato.
Potatoes and mashed potato.
But thank you, Stephanie,
Oh,
for
yeah,
that.
thank you for that confirmation. I was like, did I make that up? No.
No, I saw it too. I can remember which one, but in my mind they blur a little bit.
Yeah, no, same.
Um, so we've talked a little bit about trust.
Mhm.
It's more important than ever for every brand, whether it's
Yeah,
a big brand, a personal brand, any brand. It's trust is it, right? I
yeah.
mean, and so how do you think this trend, this personality brand
Mhm.
trend, plays into that?
Yeah, I think trust is really central to this, like, to personality brands in this shift. Like, I think you mentioned in the notes, like, the Edelman trust barometer, right? It's consistently showing that people are trusting individuals more than they are institutions. So I
Mhm,
think a lot of brands are trying to humanize, right? And going from a, like, we're a brand you trust, because most people don't trust brands anymore, to see we're someone you know, right? And so I think that makes sense in a low trust environment, which we are in, because people like familiarity, like, kind of creates comfort for them. But I think that there's a risk, and it goes back to, like, what we talk about, like, manufactured, right?
mhm,
Authenticity. So if if familiarity is being engineered purely for optics, right? I think people are picking up on that, right?
mhm,
Manufactured intimacy, manufactured authenticity, these things erode trust faster than any type of, like, I think, traditional advertising could. And so I actually think I am a big proponent of, like, the comp professional as the individual who, like, creates real alignment, right? So I think
mhm,
for us, we play a critical role, right? Because there's an opportunity for us to ensure that personalities and collaborations and the narratives we build, right, are grounded in real alignment, and it's not just strategic positioning. We we talk about this a lot at the PR Girl Manifesto, like, what is the role of the PR and comp professionals, and we try to, like, push people to really think about their work as one that's, like supposed to be anchored in ethics
mhm,
and morality.
mhm,
I think for so long we've gotten the spin, right? Like, the spin narrative has been placed on us of, like, we don't we spin everything.
mhm.
And so I think I think trust is central to the shift, and I think there's an opportunity for PR and com professionals to push these brands and these companies to really anchor in on trust and consistency and integrity.
Again, we've seen these trends kind of come and go a little bit with that. I mean, I think we see, well, what's interesting to me about the trust barometer,
Mhm.
because every year, I follow it
Yeah,
and look at it. Um, while people don't trust brands, they trust brands more than they trust other organizations, and they trust politicians, of course, and they trust the media. So that's always been interesting to me, because to
yeah,
me, that is an opportunity for
yeah.
the brand to become, the person, the not the person, but see, here I'm humanizing it.
No, you're
The one
human.
that you
It's
the one you
working.
that's how they want us to think about it, right? The
Yes.
brand becomes the one you look to,
Mhm.
for, whatever it might be, but that puts a lot of pressure on a brand, because, again, you're gonna sometimes when you make one move to, endear yourself to one part of your audience, you're gonna alienate another part of your audience. And
100%.
Nike is an example, that we've seen that with
Yeah.
multiple times.
Yeah, but I think Nike also has a really, and honestly, I think it kind of goes back to knowing your brand. Like, they're like, and we like, is your brand anchored in? When we talk about brand values, right? We talk about brand stories. We talk about all that. Like, what is it? Is it anchored in, like, trends? So, like, if something changes, like, does how you lean or towards the brand change? All of those things, I think, really are important and matter,
Mhm.
because Nike definitely does isolate people, but they're okay with that because they know who they are to, like, some degree, and they're okay with isolating people as long as they're talking to their main, like, audience, right? And it's like sometimes that core group will take you farther than trying to, like, gain the attention and, like, and trust of, like, I mean, I think we see it too, like, even in this world that we live in, like, on the other end of it is, like, that core group, like, will take you places, right? Or, like, if folks are reading between the lines, like, will take you places even if you are isolated. So it's like, I
Yeah.
think it's like it can go either way. Yeah.
Right. No, but I mean that, if you can do that, I think, that does create that trust, and that then they
Yeah.
do, people are probably, that core group. I'm going to use Nike as the example.
Yeah.
Um, just they know there's those folks are going to stick with Nike. Like they're
Oh, for
probably not
sure.
going anywhere. And then the other people might come and go. They might get mad and leave temporarily and come back, when Nike
Yeah.
introduces something they like. So, I mean, I feel like that is just that's priceless, honestly. If
Yeah.
if you can do that, I mean, it does really make a difference. So I mean, it is interesting. There are other examples, yeah, but we
Yeah. You're right.
anyway, but I mean, and not really to get not to get into politics, but
Yeah.
sometimes that's part of the creating the trust too, and brands are now kind of asked or
Hmm.
expected
To
by their
hide.
audiences
Yeah.
to take a stance on things sometimes,
Absolutely.
and
I
then I see go back and forth on that too. Like it feels like the right thing for them
Yeah.
to do, but then you see like sometimes maybe they shouldn't be doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, I
So
think we talked about this too, like on our social channels of like there's certain some brands can do it and like can be fully anchored in that because their brand history allows them to do so because their values have consistently aligned to how they show up, right? So like I do expect the Ben and Jerry's to always take a stance. I do expect the Ben and Jerry's to like to be vocal and to like like anchor
mhm,
themselves in their values and be very loud and proud about it because Ben and Jerry's historically can back that up, right? With
mhm,
their brand history. There's some brands who can't do that, and so it becomes kind of like a double-edged sword when they do make some type of like statement or take a stance
mhm,
because like institutionally or historically they haven't been able to live up to like what it is that they're promising or they're saying in that regard.
yeah,
And so I think the struggle is now that like consumers do have an expectation, right? Like whether like there I'm sure there are a bunch of people who'd be like, oh, we don't care, like we just want you to produce our product or we just want you to do XYZ. But a large demographic of people um, want to spend their dollars and their time and their attention with
mhm,
brands that they believe are aligned with their own person, like it's almost like a humanizing of it too. But I think even more so now there are a lot of things in the world that people cannot control, right? Like
mhm,
the things that people can control though is where
mhm,
their money goes, where their time goes, and where their attention goes. So they're, I think, even more critical and have even more of an expectation for brands and companies to be able to like basically like this is where we stand, this is who we are,
mhm.
and then they make their buying decisions based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, I have been writing and following trends in the industry for years, and I remember, like greenwashing, for
Yeah.
example, came to mind. Does it make sense
Mhm.
for your brand? Because people
Yeah.
are gonna know right away if you're, making some kind of claims that aren't really consistent with, you
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely.
So I know that might not that term's been around a while, but I saw somebody. What was the other? There's somebody called it sports washing this week. I saw that term used with some
Sports watch. Oh, I have to look. I have not heard that. I have to look
yeah,
to
with some
explore
of
that.
the some of the Olympic fallout. Let's just say that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, it has to align. You've used that term a lot. Alignment. Align. Does it align with your brand? What
Yeah.
you're saying and what you're doing. What are you walking the talk? Are you
Yep.
not? Because people are going to see through that, and consumers are
Absolutely.
very, savvy and they're just very tuned into that. So I don't think you can get away with saying stuff that you're not really
Oh,
really
100%.
back
Yeah.
up.
Hmm.
I know we're getting toward the end here. I have one more question, and please feel free to ask questions. People are making comments, and I love that. But if you have a question or for two, please ask or a question about this topic. So, do you think consumers are shifting toward interactive, story-driven content versus traditional content and ads?
100%. I think we've been seeing this like for a while now. I think participation is big, right? So like consumers no longer want to passively consume ads. Like I know I don't. I love feeling like I'm inside of a narrative, right? And I think that's why we're seeing the rise of things like a signature series for a lot of brands. We're seeing episodic formats. We're seeing immersive pop-ups. We're seeing behind the scenes like storytelling and like platform native video. All these things are like super relevant because I think these formats create continuity. We talked about that earlier. So they build a habit, right? And they make audiences feel like they're insiders rather than like targets who are being sold to. Um, and so I definitely think we are shifting toward interactive story driven content. I think we have for some time. I think for comms teams, this requires like this cross functional fluency that we kind of were talking about. Like we have to understand a little bit of like the production, the distribution, the talent relations. And I mean, I think experiential strategy has been kind of a part of what many of us have been doing. But you know, all these things are no longer as like separate, right? They're integrated systems. So like you let's say you build the thing, you build the signature series, how do you premiere it? How do you debut it? How do you involve, like all of these things are like tied into it. And I think it really makes the case for like the future PR and comms professional, not just being like the strategist, but also the producer. It's almost like story. People remember at the top of this year, I think at the end of last year, that whole storytelling is the most like is the number one skill that people are hiring for, right? And I think that's true, but I also think it's like story producing. It's not just a storyteller, but it's a story maker. And so I think that that we are definitely going towards that direction.
That's really interesting. I'm going to write this down. PR and comms pros as story makers.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. A story.
They're not just so like there's a need for like storytellers. Like they're like people are looking for storytelling because again, AI slap all the things, everyone sounds the same, but I don't think it's just about storytelling. I think we need like PR and comms professionals need to be story makers too. They need to know how to produce the stories and make the stories, not just tell the stories.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But again, a lot for us to take on and add to our plate.
I know there's a lot. I know. And I
Oh.
think naturally, my natural inclination, like I am very like I like my hands in everything. So like things like this like excite me, but they are a lot of work, and I think they do require one. We need to get paid for it, but I think they do require like a genuine like it can't be just one other thing that we now have to like know how to do, and like there has to be some type of like genuine like love and I think excitement around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, heaven forbid we be excited about what we're
I
doing
know.
every day.
I know.
I guess you and I are probably lucky in that regard because we kind of get to forge our own path a little bit. But
I know, and I'm so grateful for it all the time. I'm like, I think a lot about like my early days, my early PR days, and feeling like I've always kind of been like a creative person, and so traditional like media relations was always a little bit tough for me to just do solely that because I've always, I think, fancied myself a creative communication strategist, but the way that the industry has been trending has naturally been like speaking to the things that I love and I'm passionate about. So I think I'm grateful for that.
yeah, no, I am very grateful that I can
Because you can pick and choose. You can build a career that like makes sense for you and a job that makes sense for you.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm gonna put we're gonna be wrapping up here. If you have a question, please ask it quickly. But I want Fatou to just add anything that maybe we didn't hit on that she wants to add. I'm gonna go ahead and put the PR Girl Manifesto website up here, and their LinkedIn again, so you can follow those.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to add, and I think I'll say this throughout this entire conversation. I think the biggest takeaway maybe is that like there's both an opportunity and a responsibility, right? I think that we actually have more influence than ever in shaping how brands show up culturally. But I think with that, like there's a need for discernment. We need to ask ourselves questions about, are we building aligned ecosystems, or are we just manufacturing personality for attention? Are we amplifying real spaces and real voices, or are we just borrowing like that credibility without commitment? So I think again, a lot of opportunity and a lot of responsibility as well.
Right. No. And I can't thank you enough because I think this has been such a great conversation. And we could probably talk all afternoon about
I
many
know.
things.
I know.
But this was so wonderful to have you here, Fatou. I just can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you
And
for having me. This was such a treat. Seriously, I was so looking forward to this conversation, and it was just as great as I knew it was going to be.
oh, you give me so much to think about, and I hope everybody will follow the PR Girl Manifesto and follow you. And they share some really insightful posts and blog posts and things. And so make sure that you're following and looking to them as we move through this trend and many others.
And many others.
But thanks everybody who joined us. Thank you again, Fatou, for being here, and I'll see you again soon.
See you soon.